Hi and welcome to the In Vivo Repair Centre. We're just going to talk this morning, or today for you perhaps, about how to replug and check the dock amplifier ribbon cable. There is a cable which plugs into the electronics in the base. In the base of this unit under here is the sound processor, and also of course you've got the docking electronics, which might be Bluetooth now or an ordinary docking connector. It really doesn't matter as far as this video is concerned. But between the electronics in the base that does all the clever stuff with the sound, there is a ribbon cable which goes up into the amplifier. If I just remove this grill on the front, and you can do it quite easily, the easiest way to do it without marking the surround is to get something that's pointed. I'm just using a pair of tweezers and insert them into one of the holes and just lift the grill out, okay, and then you can rock it and remove it. So that's the grill removed, and it's got a series of pieces of polyurethane foam tape which when pressed down get trapped into this valley. There's a valley down here. Now if it goes back and it's a little bit loose, what you can do is get a pair of pliers, and I should have prepared for this, but I'm making this up as I go along, which has been my whole life. What you can do, if you want to just make it grip a little bit better, say it's popping out in one corner, you can just take it with a pair of pliers like this and give it a little twist like that. You can see now there's a little twist in there, and that little twist will make it grip more tightly. So there's a tip on how to make this fit a bit more securely if it's feeling loose when you put it back. Alright, note that you've got there's a return on this bit here. You can see that bit folded over, and on one side there's a cutout. So there's a piece being removed, a relief in that edge, and that relief is to miss all this stuff down here at the base, the ribbon cable for example. So when you put this back, you have to put it back that way, right? Okay, so at this point, this thing here you can see, I'll just zoom in a little bit so you get a better view. Is that better? Yeah, it is, I think so. A little bit more perhaps. You can see this is the ribbon cable. That's a padded either 18 or 20 way ribbon cable, depending on which dock you have, but they've all got this ribbon cable, and then you can see where it's plugged into the connector down there. Can you see that? See where that's plugged in down there? If I just zoom in on that, you will see a much better view. One moment. Okay, so now you can see the ribbon. Here's the actual body of the ribbon cable connector here. This is the cable connector, and you can see the ribbon plugged in, okay? And this one is plugged in okay at the moment, because I've already done this one, to be honest. I was just practicing the routine. But to check if yours needs doing is to look along this edge and make sure that they're all, you can see 20 or 18 depending on which dock you have, but all the contacts should be nice and shiny, and they should be all the same length protruding above this edge here. This edge here is the connector, and of course if there's more showing at one end than the other, then the ribbon cable isn't fully plugged in, or if there's more than about 1.5 millimeters or a 1/16 of an inch, then again it's not plugged in. You have to replug and recheck it. And the symptoms of this not being plugged in is that the dock, if you have an iPod socket, your iPod will charge and you'll get no music. Or if you've got a Bluetooth board in, you can pair with the Bluetooth, the lights and everything work, you can power everything seems to be working, but you've got no sound whatsoever. Then it could be this ribbon cable has become unplugged. And that's a common, not common, but after installation, if these screws, during the installation we undo these screws under here to allow some freedom of movement to remove this ribbon cable, but if they're taken out too far or something else has happened, then this ribbon cable can become dislodged, because there is no, this is tight, there is no, if the body of the sound processor moves downwards then it will unplug, because this is very tight, there's no extra free spare cable there. Okay, so that is that ribbon cable. So the question is, how do we check that ribbon cable? The other thing that happens with ribbon cable, which I should mention as well, is if some drink has been spilt in, or water or rain or beer, and it gets onto this connector and the dock has been powered up, this will corrode. As I say, looking that these are silver and shiny means that this one hasn't been subjected to any water, but they will corrode very quickly and they will blacken and fall off and basically destroy the connector and the cable. It's not the end of the world. We have spare cables, we have spare connectors which we can change, and with the standard service of your sound processor we can change that, both the connector and the cable, and upgrade your sound processor and check anything else on it for a fixed price. It's not very much. It's a secondary business to us. Our primary business is to sell upgrades, and so it's kind of not really a profit-making part of the business, but we do like to see these not go into landfill. We like to preserve them, so we do a very cost-effective repair of the sound processor, and afterwards we give a 2-year warranty on the sound processor if yours needs fixing. But this video is to do with the ribbon cable, okay? So what I'm going to do is to just show you another dock. I'm going to switch over to an old dock, and then we can look at the what's inside. So before you take this apart, you need to be warned about what is inside that could be damaged if you don't do it correctly, okay? So let's go on to that now. So this is our white test dock. Perfectly, sounds brilliant, but it's been through the wars. You can see it's been around for a few years in the test department, and I've just snatched it off the bench, and here's a test sound processor. But here you can see this ribbon. I'm just going to zoom in on that one again so you can have a look. Alright, so there you go. That is that connector being viewed from directly in front. I've taken the sound processor out of the case, and here is this ribbon cable. So we're just going to show you what plugging and unplugging involves with this. I mean, to plug it in and to unplug it, you just grasp the ribbon cable here and you just rock it from side to side like this, okay? And it comes out. When you've got it out, inspect to make sure all those 20, this is very worn. Can you see how many times this has been plugged in and out during test? This is a very worn example, but there's no corrosion on it, and all of the 20 or 18 if you've got a slightly different model of dock connectors, little contacts are all in place. They're not peeling off, they're not broken, folded, crossed over or damaged, okay? So that's a good ribbon cable. And to plug it in, we just lined it up with the slot like this, and then you push it in bit by bit until it's fully in. So that's what it looks like when it's fully in, okay? So that's the actual body of the connector and the ribbon cable. Now if we have another look at this, I'm just going to quickly show you what's inside the dock so that you can appreciate more clearly what you're doing when you do this checking and replugging of the sound processor ribbon. Now what we have, trying to find a screwdriver, you need a number 2-point screwdriver, posi drive, to take out these 4 screws, these 4, right? Now that's the, I've left it like that. This is the infrared remote control board. You can see her there, and she is connected by, or it is connected by, a small ribbon cable. And of course, again, you can see that was almost hanging out. That needs to be plugged in. If I pull the actual deadening foam off, you can see in a similar situation the ribbon cable plugged into the connector. Actually, if I pull, maybe that might help. You can see there they are. Okay, so it's fully plugged in, and this is held on by one screw behind this foam padding at the front of the dock. Now this ribbon cable, sorry about the focus, it does that when you zoom out, you can see goes, if I move this tape out of the way, which someone's put on very thoughtfully of them. This is not standard tape, by the way, this is an old dock, as I explained. You can see this ribbon cable folds around, goes down, in, and plugs into the amplifier underneath. This thing here is the heatsink for the power amplifier. So I'm going to remove these 4 screws now and just show you what's under there. Move the iPods and things off the bench, and here we go. So one thing about these screws, and I mention this again and again, when you put them back, if you carefully turn them without putting any pressure on them, you can feel them. You can do these by finger in this situation. You can feel them engage in the old thread that's been previously cut, because they are self-tapping screws. They cut the thread into the bare plastic, the smooth plastic, but it does take quite a lot of force to, because these dock bodies are made of polycarbonate. This is the same material, obviously white version, of what aircraft, commercial passenger aircraft windows. It's polycarbonate, and you might as well just put it straight back in the pre-cut threads of the screws rather than cutting a brand new thread, because it's much more effort for a start. So when you put them back, just gently feel them and twist them, and then you'll feel them fit into the thread and start to turn quite easily, and that just makes it easier. And of course, if the screws have to come in and out a lot of times, it's worthwhile using the old thread rather than trying to cut a new one. Alright, so I'll explain a bit more about this ribbon orientation when we get to doing the real dock. This is a test dock. Obviously the ribbon has been extended and hanging out. All of this ribbon is normally tucked in behind here. So if I just lift the amplifier out, and I do this by just levering it just here, okay, and then if I unplug the sound processor, so we've got a bit of freedom of movement, I can flip this over and show you what's inside. So we don't want to pull this edge away because the ribbon cable will come unplugged, and it's perfectly possible to lift the amplifier out like that and free this ribbon cable, which is normally inside, which I'll show you in a moment. But if I just take the amplifier out, I'll show you what's connected. You pull these barbs in. That's the two speaker connections for the actual speakers, and then if I flip it right over, you can see there is the ribbon cable. So that tiny connector down there is the connector of the where the remote control goes in, and it's very easy for it to come unplugged. So when you're handling this the amplifier, what you do is to keep this edge, keep your fingers, this finger and that finger on the plastic, and then you swivel the thing over, and then you can get access to get this ribbon cable out, okay, and do the replugging of the sound processor. If you do accidentally pull it and it comes out like this, then I will show you on the other dock, but you just need to plug this back in, and you do this by reaching over and pushing it back in. Alright, we'll see a little bit more on the real dock when we do the actual dock. So that's what's inside, right? And then there's a ribbon cable here that plugs in. This is the other end of the ribbon cable, goes into this connector here. This connector is not very easily, but if you are a little bit boisterous with it, it will come off the board. They're not particularly securely fastened. So when you are plugging and unplugging this, if you need to change the ribbon cable, be careful, that's all I say. Fortunately, this amplifier is incredibly reliable. We've only ever seen a handful of faulty amplifiers, and it's usually due to a severe power problem like lightning or something has damaged them. But this part of the dock, the top half of the dock, is incredibly reliable and very, very robustly made. Okay. So going back to our dock that we're going to check and replug the ribbon cable. So the first thing we do is to, again, sorry to bore you on this one, but it's a necessary evil, is to remove these 4 screws. Should have got an electric screwdriver. There's one. Obviously look after your screws, put them in a pot or something. Right, okay, so there we are. So that's the amplifier released, and again you might need to lever it up carefully. Keep your fingers here to stop the top half coming out, right? And it might be stuck down, so you might need to go around it just to free it, which what this one is, okay? There's a rubber gasket on the back of this, and if this amplifier is not screwed firmly back into the aperture and it's not sealed, then the bass air pressure waves, which are supposed to be transmitted out here, are wasted. So if this is not screwed in properly and sealed properly, then it will affect the bass performance. You'll notice a real big reduction in the bass performance, and occasionally if this rubber seal is not quite right, it's come detached and it's not screwed down, it actually causes it to whistle like a reed in a clarinet or something. You get this whistling noise during the bass parts. It sounds very strange, and it's actually a mechanical effect. If you play this dock on loud, you get quite a pressure coming out of this part. You can feel puffs. You know, if you put a cigarette in front of it, you can see the smoke blowing away. It's actually quite a powerful device, actually, well designed. So now we are holding it down with this string and this string, and then we're just going to tip this up, okay, and then we can reveal what's inside. Alright, we're keeping it well. We don't unplug this ribbon for the remote control, so we are just tipping the front up, and then you can see what's inside. And the object at this stage is to make sure this is plugged in properly. You can see it is, so it's not become dislodged from that end, so leave that well alone. And then just to free this ribbon cable, you can see I'm going to free it now off that edge. It might be stuck, you might need to pull it gently, and it's free, okay. And now what we do is we just leave a little bit of slack in there to stop it pulling on it when we screw it down, and just put that back down there. And to stop it coming out while we're doing the next operation, we just need to replace one of the screws, alright, just to stop it flopping about and dropping off and pulling the remote control ribbon out of the amplifier. Alright, so that screws back in. So now that's secure, and we have plenty of spare ribbon to play with, alright. So what do you do next? Well, you let's pretend, should we unplug this now? Yeah, pretend it's come unplugged or it's badly lodged, alright, but we're going to check it in a moment. So now what you do is you turn the dock over, and then you remove these 4 screws. And again, the same thing about making sure that it engages properly. Just make life easy for yourself. This is what we do, because we're engineers. What it is about managers? Managers always seem to want to make their life difficult. And because their life is difficult, they want to make it difficult for everyone else. When I was a manager, I used to try and make life easy for everyone. That's probably why I wasn't a very good manager. Anyway, I digress. This is a professional video. This is not Bob Ross and electronics. Right, so we've taken those 4 screws out, and then we can pull that away. All right, and then if you grasp this cradle area is mounted on these 4 rubber bushes. They're kind of like, basically like rubber grommets, and they're vibration absorption bushes, because this cradle area is isolated from the dock body, because on the old iPods that had hard disks in, when you turn up the volume and give her the beans, the vibrations would work their way through to the hard disk in the iPod and cause the tracks to jump on the hard disk to lose track of where it was and reset and miss tracks, and music would break up. So it's an anti-vibration mount, but it's not really required now because everything has got solid state discs. But obviously if you're playing an old iPod, you'll still need it. Okay, so what you can do now is just lift this sound processor out. Okay, you have to be mindful of this ribbon, but this ribbon is folded in half, so you can see the sound processor will come out quite happily. And there is the connector we're going to plug into, alright? So holding that in place, don't turn it upside down, otherwise these rubber bushes will fall out. You can put them back, but they bounce. They go a long way. And you're surprised how many people ask for extra bushes because they drop them and they say, we don't know where they went. But you can look down through there and you can see, there's the ribbon, there's my finger. Just zoom a little bit closer on that gap for you. Right? Of course I'm holding this with my other hand there with my thumb on the back. And you can see that gap there, and if we just look down, feed this ribbon through, there she blows. Okay, we can get her up there, and we can then pull enough of that through to enable us to re-engage the connector. So if we turn this over, remember the connector is on the front, there it is, so there's our connector, there's our ribbon cable. Okay, just pull enough through, there's plenty of slack, as it were, to get this to plug in, and then we're just going to plug that in, okay? We've inspected it, we've made sure it's all in good nick, good condition. We say good nick in the UK, I don't know what you say in America and the rest of the world. And then reaching behind, a bit of reach around, grab hold of the cable, and what I'm doing is I'm pulling this cable through. You can see it moving, and whilst the cable is getting shorter, the sound processor is dropping back into position. This ribbon needs to come out the front, which it does, and then gently easing the sound processor back into position. Helps if you pull the right ribbon. There we are. Might have to just jiggle it around, but be patient. Yeah, now it's back, alright? So we're back in position. I'm just going to hold this in position there and just check the ribbon's plugged in. It is. So put this cover back on. Put your 4 screws back. Don't press on the screw, just turn it gently until it engages in its old thread, is my advice. There you go. See that one drop in? See how easy that is to do? If that has to cut its new thread, it will be a struggle to get that back in. They really are quite tough screws. Okay, just checking the exposure. Yeah, screws back in. 1, 2. Clearly you're going to have to put these in. I'm not going to bother at the moment, just for expediency's sake. So now we've got the ribbon fully plugged in and it's still loose, so we just need to remove that screw that we put in to hold the amplifier in place, like so. It's Saturday today. Okay, lift up the amplifier, keeping your fingers there so it's not pulled away at the back where the ribbon plugs in. Small ribbon, and then just feed the cable in with your finger. No special way of doing it. When you do screw it back down, you want to make sure that this part doesn't. Sometimes that is squashed up on this edge. You can imagine that goes down. This can be squashed up. You want to make sure that that number with that bit on there doesn't get clamped when you put the amplifier back in. All right. So. You can see it's trying to catch. One technique of doing this is to pull a little bit of slack of this ribbon out from the dock, and then when it goes back you can use a blunt something just to push it in like that. Okay, so make sure you don't trap the ribbon twice. This only needs to be a single layer of ribbon going through into the dock, and it bows inside the dock, loops around and comes back into the amplifier. You don't want it both clamped. We've had new ones that have failed from customers where that ribbon has been clamped at the factory and it's folded it absolutely 180 on itself. It's folded right back on itself, or is that 180 or 360? Anyway, and the ribbon's cracked. Okay, so they made the mistake at the factory. So as competent amateurs, we can do better than a factory worker in, I think these are made in Mexico actually. So obviously quality control is everything. Procedures are required. So the 4 screws go back in like so. Make sure this thing is tightened down and it's airtight. If not airtight, your base will be affected. So that's an actual demonstration of me not following my own advice. When I talk and screw at the same time, it's not always gives good results. Oh. Okay, so make sure you feel those knit down, that amplifier is in there and up against the shoulder, because if it's just the screws that have gone tight and it's not held in position, I'll say it again, the base will be affected. Alright, so there we go. And so you can see now, you can double check your amplifier ribbon is all plugged in. You can see it's looking lovely, beautiful. You can see that it's all in. Alright, okay, and then you just put this in position, just push it back into place, and that's the job done. Okay, you can see we've got a little bit of, see that springing out there. So what we do is we just take it back out again, he says. Okay, we'll just take it out gently and we'll give her a bit of a twist on these top 2. It's not too much, just grab it like that and twist it, and grab it like that and twist it. So we've got a little bit of a kink in there, you know, because let's face it, little bit of kink is good, and now when we push her back in, she'll stay put. She'll stay put. Right, great stuff. There we go, it's in. Okay, so do we need a bit on that side as well? I think this is slightly misshapen, this grill. I think it's slightly misshapen. What I'm going to do is to get that to fit a little bit better. You don't normally have to do this, occasionally you do. Is just give it a little bit of a bend so that it's the right shape. There we go. So now it's all in. Okay, lovely. A little bit of a tweak again. So that will solve, often that will solve your problem without having to revert to us or ever having to send the dock in or throw the dock in the bin, if you like. And it's a good test, it's a good thing to do if you've got your own dock and you can't get it working or it's failed. There is a chance, probably 30% chance, it's that ribbon connector has come unplugged or has not been correctly plugged in, or if it's had some drink or water spilt in it, it is susceptible because it's kind of out in the open if the water goes down. If this doesn't solve your problem, then what you need to do now is to look at the next video, which is dealing with issues on the Bose SounDock Series 1 sound processor. Now there is a bug in the sound processor, poor design basically, which means after several years it becomes intermittent. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, won't start, won't play, no audio, and that problem gradually gets worse until it won't play at all. And if that sounds like your dock, then you need to see the next video as well, because it could be that you need to get your sound processor fixed, alright? And we do the sound processor repair and do a 2-year warranty on them, so once done they just carry on going. It's just a few schoolboy errors that need addressing on the thing. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed watching that and that this was useful to you and your dock.